We're good to go. Hi, everyone. I am Shachar. I'm really happy to be here with you this morning. I'm the Restorative Justice Specialist on campus, and you may be asking, what is that? I help implement restorative practices throughout the school and support in building community among students and teachers. And I use restorative principles, which really center relationships and healing harms, and particularly meeting community members' needs. So my role here is to help students, along with teachers, navigate interpersonal conflicts and help mentor and lead students through processing sessions and restorative circles, and really support the implementation of those processes in the classroom as well as throughout the school. So I'm here to really support your students in navigating conflict with their peers. And I'm really excited for what second semester holds.
Great. And I want to introduce you to our full-time social worker. Ms. Lopez, Bristol Lopez, was split before, working with part-time at Lexington and part-time at another site. And we definitely recognize that we have a need for Ms. Lopez to be here full-time. And so she is part of our support center, and her office is located right there with our counselors. So we're really trying to create that support center for all of our students. So we have Ms. Lopez, who's going to be bringing us our presentation today.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see all of you here. Again, my name is Bristol Lopez, and I'm the school social worker. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about what I do as I start the presentation. So are we good to go? I can start sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, just let me know if there's any issues with this. All right. Okay. Let me just minimize this. All right. So welcome to Coffee with a Social Worker. I've been looking forward to this. Today, we're just talking about how to look after our mental wellness. I'm going to try to breeze through this as quickly as possible, just so we can get to some questions. So we'll just dive right in. So obviously, you all know this. We want to try to keep ourselves muted. And then if you do have questions, just type them in the chat box for us to address later on. Here's our agenda for the day. The big part of this is going to be talking about mental health versus mental wellness, and then how we can take care of ourselves and our kids throughout the holidays. So a little about me. I am a licensed clinician. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in my 7th year of practice. My current role here is to support the academic success of students at Lexington by addressing mental health related barriers. So this is where I differ from an academic counselor. The counselors are going to address the academic success through the academic lens with a little bit of the social emotional piece as well. What I do is, when I hear there's more of a mental health concern or mental illness involved, or any type of risk behaviors, that's where I come in. And so it's kind of like that step above what the counselor will do, but particularly addressing mental health related things, in addition to like our unique population. So if we have foster youth or McKinney-Vento youth, those are all students that I try to be aware of, so that we can make sure that we're supporting them in the best way possible. So we wanted to talk a little bit about just the supports that we offer as a counseling team. So I call our counseling team like our set of 2 counselors, our part-time counselor, myself, and then we also have Shahar now. And so students are always available to come, they're always welcome to come up and meet with a counselor or meet with myself to get support or ask questions about mental illness, mental health, grades, and just things in general. They're always welcome to come up here and talk to one of us. We also just started a grief and loss group that concluded yesterday, and that was 6 weeks long. And those were students that were referred directly to me, and then myself and my interns led a grief and loss tools for support group over the past 6 weeks or so. We do have some upcoming groups we're planning on, and this is where students will kind of be hand selected to be a part of tools groups to help them, again, feel successful at school and be able to manage their symptoms or things that might be barriers to their success in school. We have a restorative justice specialist. I also started a Be Kind to Your Mind club, which some of you may be aware of, but this is our mental health club on campus. I started it this year, and we have an amazing group of students that come in every week faithfully to talk about just mental health, destigmatizing mental health, and how we can support the students on campus. We also have the OC Bridges Club, which they were key in doing the self-care workshops. And so I know Danny knows a little bit more about that. Did you want to speak to that a little bit? If you're shaking your head or something, I cannot see. Okay, it doesn't look like he's with us right now, but the OC Bridges Club was,
Wait.
oh,
I'm here.
Okay.
I apologize. Doing multiple things at the same time. So Ms. Lopez, can you ask your question again for me, please?
oh yeah, we were talking about OC Bridges.
Okay, and you want me to explain what OC Bridges is?
Yes.
Perfect. I would love to. So we partner with OC Human Relations, and OC Human Relations is one of our district partners, and they bring all different types of pieces to our campus. One of them is with Ms. Cohen-Hodos, with Shahar being the restorative justice piece. But they also bring presentations. They also bring other tools. And one of the programs they brought to our campus is called OC Bridges. And we work with a representative from OC Human Relations, and we actually have an OC Bridges club on campus. And what this club is for students to create their own campaign. And the campaign is something that they create together. They work through different pieces with OC Human Relations. It can be on mental health support, emotional support. It can be on anti-bias training. It can be on environmental campaigns. And so like last year, the students, and it's very student oriented and student run, and they come up with their own campaigns. Last year, they decided they were going to work on an environmental campaign. They might work on student voice. And they go through a retreat here at the school, and they work through those pieces. So OC Bridges is a leadership club on campus that brings about change. They drive the change, and then they go through a retreat to go through through these workshops. And any questions on that I can help answer?
I think that was it for me.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I'm going to mute myself.
No worries. We all got a lot going on. The last thing that we do is support with linkage to services. So if you are curious about getting your student linked to a mental health provider, that is something that I can assist with and I can provide resources for. And I'll get into that in a little more detail later on. Okay, so I will turn it over to Shahar so that she can go into a little bit more detail about what she does here on campus.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bristol. So I know I explained a little bit of kind of generally what I do, but I think it would be supportive for you all to know kind of what my day looks like and how you can refer your kids to come see me. One of the main things I do is supporting students through interpersonal conflicts. So that can range anywhere from a fight friends are having to a disciplinary issue on campus. And what I do is bring the students together, address what happened, ask people to name what the harms were and how it impacted them, and ask people to take accountability for their actions, and then figure out what we can do together to make things right. And so this is an opportunity for students both to be able to navigate conflict in a healthy and full picture way. And it allows us to teach students how to navigate conflict. I think one of the really important pieces of mental wellness is what it looks like to be in community with one another. And my role is really to support students in navigating that. And especially after a year at home, we're all adjusting to being in community with one another again, and navigating what it looks like to be in a classroom and on campus. And my goal is really to support students in trying things out and supporting them when they feel like they're really not able to navigate social situations. And so I'm always here. I get referrals both from admin and the counselor, so I work very closely with that team. But students are also welcome to just come to my room. I'm in room 201, and I'll put my email in the chat also. If you feel like you want to reach out to me because you want to process something, or you want your student to come to my room, I'm always happy to support you and support your students. Yeah.
Thank you. Move forward. Okay, so transitioning a little bit, I wanted to talk about what mental wellness is. So we hear that term all the time: mental health, mental illness. Mental wellness isn't necessarily something we may hear often, but we do tend to hear about wellness when we're talking about our physical health. So my goal and my club's goal on campus is to start building awareness around this idea of mental wellness, because we believe that mental health is just as important as physical health. And sometimes when we consider ourselves healthy, we may not be well. And so we kind of talk about it like it's on a continuum. So let's kind of define what the difference is. I pulled up the American Psychological Association's definition of mental health. There's a lot of different ones out there, and not all of them explain it very well. But this one I liked, and it said it's a state of mind characterized by emotional well-being, good behavioral adjustment, relative freedom from anxiety and disabling symptoms, and a capacity to establish constructive relationships and cope with the ordinary demands and stresses of life. Whoa. So when I read that, I like it. And I just thought that's a lot. And that's a lot for our junior hires here on campus to be able to have. And so I'm kind of thinking, if we need to have this to have mental health, we may run into some barriers there. And so I wanted to tease that out a little bit, which is what we'll do in the next slide. So again, that was the APA's definition, and I'll kind of give you my definition, but I kind of think of it as more than a state of health. So I believe that having good mental health is more than the absence of illness, or even like the absence of certain behaviors, but rather it's the presence of wellness. And wellness is promoted by healthy habits, positive social supports, resiliency, and effective coping strategies. So that's in a sense to say that maybe we don't do all of these things perfectly. Maybe we don't have freedom from disabling symptoms. Maybe we don't always have the ability to have positive relationships in our lives. But when we think of what it's promoted by, and we're in search of healthy habits. We're in search of positive social supports. We're building our resiliency. We're learning effective coping strategies. Those are all promoting wellness. So in a sense, we could have a mental illness while also be doing things to promote our wellness. And why is this important? So this is just some really bare bones statistics from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also referred to as NAMI, but they found that 1 in 6 US youth between the ages of 6 and 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. And when they refer to a mental health disorder, that is something that is diagnosable, like meets the criteria of a full-fledged mental illness, such as major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder. This isn't just having symptoms of a mental illness. This is being diagnosed. And 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14. So a lifetime mental illness would be something that you have throughout your lifetime, and half of that can be identified by about this age that students are here. So I do get questions from parents a lot of, this just started happening, or we just started noticing this, or since the onset of COVID, these symptoms sort of came about. That's very normal. It's very normal, and that's why I'm here. And that's what I want to help families navigate in terms of figuring out, is this age appropriate? Is it not? And how can we screen it further to ensure that it doesn't further impair their success or their ability to be successful in their life. So when we think of, like I mentioned before, when we think of mental health or mental wellness on a continuum, excuse me, I really liked this graphic. And this is by the Youth Mental Health Project. And they have a really, helpful webpage on this that I can put in the chat if you would like. It's about a 2-page handout that just goes into detail what this means. So you can kind of read through this, but at the bottom end of the continuum, we have illness, and that means it's severely impairing their life. And so this may be actual impairments in their brain chemistry. So it could be like what you hear, like a chemical imbalance. So the neurons and the different hormones in your brain are not working the way that they need to be. They could be because of trauma. It could be pervasive unhealthy lifestyles. It could be different family dynamics that have caused things, substance use, physical illness, unsafe environments that we're coming from. And these can all impair one's life and cause or contribute to mental illness. And then when we go up to the middle, you have some impairment. And then at the top, we have our optimal. And so they describe mental wellness factors as mindfulness, supportive family life, going to therapy, taking your medication, living a healthy lifestyle, things that contribute to your physical wellness, and being in a safe and supportive environment. And so this kind of encapsulates our social environment, our academic or work environment, and our daily activities. It's not necessarily just do your self-care and that's going to contribute to wellness. No, there are different things in each of these categories of our life that contribute to our wellness. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean the absence of mental illness. It's when we are utilizing and incorporating these mental wellness factors into our life that can contribute to wellness. And when we're doing those things, that helps treat and decrease the symptoms or the factors that are contributing to mental illness. I know this can be a little bit, it's kind of a lot, it's kind of a complex thing, but hopefully it's making sense as we go along. Okay, so how do we promote mental wellness? I already talked about some broad things that we can do, but I wanted to give some really specific things that we can do to promote mental wellness. And this is, again, it's going beyond your self-care model. Self-care is important, but I think it's a term that can be overused, and we tend to just not even consider it. We don't give it the time of day because we're like, who has time for self-care? And what does that even mean? You know, like taking a bath or going for a run at the end of the day is not going to cure my depression, or it's not going to help my kid do their homework and get it turned in. That's not going to work. And in reality, no, it's not going to change our lives. But what I like to think of self-care as, or habits that can support our mental wellness, is just that, habits. When these things become habits in our lives, it actually creates new neural pathways in your brain, and starts to kind of get rid of the old ones. So if your normal habit, I'll say as an adult, like a normal habit would be maybe you come home from work, and I'm generalizing this, come home from work, kick off your shoes, lay on the couch, maybe have a glass of wine or a beer, watch some TV, and call it self-care, and then go to bed. That is all fine and dandy, and that is great. That sounds like a great night to me. But what that's doing is it's creating that pathway in your brain that in order to relax at the end of the day, I need to have this and I need to have this, and that's what works. However, is that promoting wellness? I don't know. We could probably argue that everybody's life is a little bit unique. But I would generally say maybe not. That may be promoting survival, like being able to get through the day or being able to get through the week, but it's not necessarily intentionally utilizing these practices to support wellness. So wellness kind of goes above and beyond. It's not just getting by, it's intentionally engaging in practices or behaviors to where they become habits that they're actually giving into your life. Like they're giving back to you and sustaining you and building you up. So these are the two key ones that I talk to my students about: connecting with others. And this is why when there's issues with friends on campus, that we see like pretty big meltdowns in our students, because connection with others is like why we're on this earth, right? And that's why the pandemic was so difficult. So I wrote here, mental illness is often invisible. We don't see it. We don't see it the same way we see physical illness necessarily. And I said that it wins the game when we isolate or we feel the need to hide how we feel rather than connect with our support system. We don't want it to win. And I use that language because that's usually how I describe it to my students, because we think of it as, okay, these symptoms or these things that are impairing your ability to be successful in your life, they win when we do X, Y, and Z, when we isolate, when we keep ourselves from our support system rather than seeking help. The other one is acknowledging your feelings, and that goes hand in hand with connecting with others. It's okay to not be okay, and I preach that all day long. And it's actually really important to notice when you're not okay and express it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'll even talk with students about how there's no bad emotions. The thing that gets us into trouble is how we deal with those emotions. And usually the anger and the behaviors and the outbursts come from keeping those deep down uncomfortable emotions inside. And then what happens is they get externalized, and then we see the behaviors. And then kids feel like, okay, now I'm being punished for how I feel, when in reality, they was never expressed and it wasn't ever dealt with. And so again, that's why we have a whole team here of people to be able to address all these different factors that are coming about. I'll tell my students, when we call it out, we take away its power. So if a student's struggling with anxiety, I'm like, okay, we got to notice when it's coming into your brain or coming into your body and call it out, almost like you would call out like an intruder that you don't want in your presence, or somebody who's constantly interrupt you and you don't want in your presence. You say, I see you here. I don't want you here. I need you to leave. And that also externalizes the emotion from you rather than feeling like it's all one. So a lot of times we can feel like, okay, I'm experiencing anger or I'm experiencing anxiety. That would be the appropriate way of saying it, but we'll say, I am anxious, I am depressed, I am angry, I am that, and we start to identify with it. When we call it out, we externalize it from ourselves. And that's something that I try to teach students pretty much every day. All right, so I subscribe to David Kessler's, he's a grief and loss author and expert. I subscribe to his new newsletter, and he just put out this newsletter, and he was introducing this man, Paul Denniston. He's the founder of Grief Yoga. I'm a huge fan of yoga. I'm a huge fan of just holistic practices and well-being, but I really appreciated these 8 tips that he shared for caring for your well-being. And rather than me come up with something on my own, I'm just giving this directly to you. So these are things that he described as caring for your mental wellness, not only through the holiday season, but in general. And these are things that can help for adults and students alike. But you as the adult, you get to model this for your student, and they get to see that this is a practice that is used in our home. And this is something that can become a habit, and not only a habit, but just a common practice in the family. So some of these words may sound a little like yogi-ish, but bear with me. I'm trying to like pare it down as much as possible. He mentions cleanse. And so I think he's just trying to find like one word to encompass all of these factors. But he mentioned like taking hot showers and taking a hot bath. And I actually recommend this a lot for my students, especially with anxiety. So a cold shower can snap you out of something real quick. And if you think about, if you've ever lost your hot water before, which I have, getting out of that shower is all you can think about. You're not thinking about the anxiety. You're actually thinking about how to stay warm. So that can be something used as a coping tool. Also staying hydrated. I have to talk with students about this all day, every day. How much water are you drinking? Because that contributes to your mood and your wellness. Are you meditating? Are you using mindfulness practices? Those are things that bring you to the present moment rather than focusing on all of these external things around you, and kind of sheds that from your system. The next one is sweat. So he describes it as something that purifies and energizes, which it does. Sweat is actually one of the ways that we burn fat. It comes out through our sweat, and it also gets rid of impurities, and it energizes you. So exercising is a huge, huge one. I'm a huge promoter of exercise. Breathing. So this can sometimes go hand in hand with meditating, but breathing, and he mentions getting outside. So going on nature walks and taking in what is around you, that's a form of grounding. So when we're taking in our outside experiences, specifically in an environment that's calming, like a park, or, when we go on hikes, we're taking in there, we're engaging all of our senses. We're noticing the trees around us. We're noticing how beautiful it is. We're not as much focused on the things that cause us stress. And this is, again, something that is going to promote wellness and decrease stress. It's not just a distraction, it's decreasing stress. Movement. So he's referring to movement specifically as like yoga or stretching or just mindful movements, because it can calm your nervous system and it can calm big feelings. So I love yoga because it actually is proven to calm your nervous system. And so there's something called the vagus nerve. I'm not sure if many of you know about this, and I said I was going to go quickly, but now this is something I'm really passionate about. But Your vagus nerve is something that runs all the way through your body. And when you are anxious or activated or stressed, this is the nerve that gets activated. And this is why you'll feel anxiety in your body. You know, it can start in your brain and then you start feeling it in your body, and that's your vagus nerve. And so the things that we can do to actually, they call tone your vagus nerve, or basically take care of it to calm your nervous system, get you out of that fight, flight, or freeze, are things like yoga, mindfulness, mindful movement, and breathing. And so when I'm talking to students about anxiety and how to calm it when they're having a panic attack, we're doing these things. We're actively toning the vagus nerve. And it's things that once they become a habit, when you are in stress, your body then sort of knows what to do, and it knows that this helps, and your go-to is to use it, and it actually brings down the stress.
Bristol, can you repeat what that nerve was again?
Yeah, I can write it in the chat. All right. So this came out of the work by, and I'm probably going to misspell this, but Stephen Porges. He wrote the body keeps score, I think it is. So it's basically saying that stress and trauma get stored in your body. So you may not have any recollection of it, but your body remembers, and it affects how you deal with stress and manage new traumas that come into your life. And that can actually get activated, and your body can have the same response in the present, almost like it's going through that situation that happened in the past. So when we take care of our nervous system and we utilize practices that can calm and support our nervous system, that actually helps us deal with ongoing stressors, rather than just say, shoving them under the rug or like distracting, we're actually teaching our body how to cope with it in a more healthy way rather than just ignoring it, because then it starts to like pile up. So David Kessler wrote in this email that, well, he's suggesting that our grief doesn't get smaller, we get bigger. And I know we're talking about mental wellness and now I'm bringing up grief. But I do that intentionally because I know the holidays can be a time where if we've had losses in our life, it doesn't necessarily have to be death that caused the loss, but it can be loss of relationship with people, moves, loss of our normal habits, loss of jobs. The pandemic caused a lot of loss for a lot of people. And when he writes that grief doesn't get smaller, we get bigger, that means that when we use these 8 tips, that is making ourselves bigger. It's making ourselves more capable. It's increasing our capacity, like increasing our, how I describe it to students is like your phone battery's charged. So it's actually charging you up and increasing your ability to stay charged longer. We know that grief doesn't go away over time. It has no timeline, and it comes and goes in waves, especially around the holidays. So that's another reason why these things are so important. The other 4 we have here, a little bit more easy to understand. Rest. We know how important rest is, and that could be taking naps. It could be taking frequent breaks throughout the day, following a sleep routine. This is something I talk about all the time, but having a specific sleep routine is really helpful. Touch. And so I found this interesting. This isn't something I always think about. It's not my go-to, but he mentioned self-massaging, or what I like to use is like a foam roller, or like a lacrosse ball, or like a tennis ball, to massage out those different knots that we tend to develop from like sitting at a desk like this all the time. That's something that, again, can tone your vagus nerve or calm your nervous system. And for our kids, hugs. So many hugs, long hugs, squeezes when you're seeing them, squeezing their shoulders, squeezing their arm. Touch is a form of connection with people, and something that can calm them, especially if that's something that your child particularly loves, because we all have our different love languages, right? Some of them may be more inclined to touch, some of them not so much, but you would know. Singing. So I don't know if you guys love singing in the shower, singing in the car, but this is something, again, that can really change your perspective. It can shift your mood in a heartbeat. The number one coping tool I hear from students is music. Mostly they're listening to it, but what if they were to sing, or what if they were to hum along? Like when you hum, that actually connects you again to that vagus nerve that runs through your body. That's why in yoga they do that I don't know if you've heard that, but it's very calming. And the last one is dance. And so maybe when you're listening to music, you're dancing along to it. I don't know many people that were dancing because they were sad. You're dancing and it's putting you in a happy mood. And when you're with other people, like grooving in the car, again, that is shifting you into a different perspective. And movement is like the number one antidepressant out there. Movement and sunlight is what I talk about all the time. And dancing is a form of movement. It's also connected to music. You can be dancing and singing, kill two birds with one stone. But those are the 8 tips that he mentioned. Hopefully at least a couple of them can resonate with you, and maybe it has already found its way into your routine. That's amazing. But not all of us have these ideas, which is why I'm throwing them out there for you. Take what you like, leave the rest. And this is what I wanted to end it on. So we can practice those habits all day long. But the reality is sometimes we are still dealing with a mental illness. We still have full-blown depression, or our child is still struggling with social anxiety. And doing those things are great, but it's not actually treating the mental illness. And that's when I will say, do not hesitate to seek professional help. On that little continuum earlier, one of the things they mentioned was psychotherapy, and that just means therapy. And maybe medication if that's something that you are interested in. But that all goes hand in hand. If a mental illness is something that you are worried about for yourself or a family member, for your child, doing those practices doesn't necessarily get rid of it. It promotes wellness, but it doesn't necessarily treat the illness. And that's when you would want to seek professional help. This is something that you can always email me about if you have questions. And it says here, we care about our physical health, so why don't we care about or care for our minds? A lot of times we don't address our mental health until it starts impacting our physical health. And by then, it's gone on a long time. So when you start seeing the signs of illness, or you notice that there's a lot of these factors in your life or your child's life, that's when you might want to start considering, okay, maybe I want to talk to somebody. And there's no shame in that. There shouldn't be shame. I know there is, but we're working on, as a society, just destigmatizing that. So if you are interested in seeking professional help, or if you've just had questions about it and you want to start doing your research, I usually direct parents to the website called Psychology Today. It's literally just psychologytoday.com, and you can go on there. They have lots of blog posts and articles, but you can also search for a therapist in your area. And so you can put in specific filters that filter through what specifically you're looking for. So one that works with teens, who takes Anthem Blue Cross, who specializes in anxiety. You can put those filters in, and you can get results of different therapists that fit that criteria. And then you can also see their picture and then their little about me. So you can actually research a little bit about them. Depending on your insurance. So usually if you have a PPO, you can go through the therapist directly to set up an appointment. If it's Kaiser or an HMO, it can be helpful to at least maybe have one picked out. And then when you contact your insurance, you can say, hey, can I get referred to this person? That's always an option too. Just be aware that if this is something you're looking into, all of them have really long wait lists right now. I don't think the mental health field was prepared for the onslaught of just clients and incoming things that we were getting with the pandemic. We kind of knew it was coming, but we're typically in the field, we're very understaffed. So just be aware that you may have a wait list and it may be kind of hard to find somebody. But put yourself on that wait list because you never know, something could cancel and time flies. So at least having like an upcoming appointment can be helpful. And then if you do have Medi-Cal, you can contact 855 OC Links or just Google OC Links and you can contact them directly and they will link you to a provider for yourself or your child. Okay, that was all I had to share today. I did see a few things coming up in the chat, so I'll take a look. Oh, thank you for putting that link in there.
So at this particular time, if you have any questions that you want to ask Ms. Lopez, Ms. Cohen Hodos, or myself, we'll stick on for a little while.
And then,
Did I cut you off, Ms. Lopez? Did you have something else that you wanted to share?
No, I was just going to put this link in the chat as well.
Perfect.
cool. And then before I stop recording, I do have a question I wanted to ask and get on the recording, and then I'll stop recording for any of the other questions. So the question is, Ms. Lopez, what are your thoughts about social media, digital devices, platforms that students use nowadays to communicate? How do we help manage these? I feel like these are a big contributor to mental health issues, but yet it's the way that this generation communicates.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Can you say that one more time? My phone was ringing and it was distracting me.
Not a problem. So what are your thoughts about social media, digital devices, and platforms that students use nowadays to communicate? How do we help manage these? I feel like these are a big contributor to mental health issues, but yet it's the way that this generation communicates.
Yeah, this is an ongoing discussion. It is so hard. It's like a double-edged sword because there are a lot of things about social media that are really helpful to mental health. Like there's a lot of pages out there that like therapists going on and talking about mental health and how to support your mental health and all of that. So it can be a resource when it's used that way. But I feel like the things that our students stumble across don't always necessarily end up being that way. And so it is kind of how you use it, in my opinion. And this, I can really only speak for me. It's how you use it. And if you're going into it with trying to connect with your friends and you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody out there, and then you're getting yourself trapped in these group chats that can be very demeaning either to you or to other people, that of course is going to contribute to poor mental health. However, how we manage that, I think, is unique to each home. And I know maybe Danny could speak to this a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that social media, electronic devices is probably one of the greatest challenges of our 21st century in schools, and not only in schools, but also at home, and how we manage them as parents, how we manage them within the classrooms. It's incredibly difficult because we do recognize that there are a lot of benefits to the devices, and that's how kids communicate. And it has only been increased during the time when they were in remote learning, right? A lot of our kids were making those connections between each other while they were in remote learning. In many cases, that was their only social circles. So how do we bring that back into the foreground so that our students are able to utilize these pieces in a positive way, right? In a healthy, mentally healthy and emotionally healthy way. We are addressing this in multiple ways, and we can continue to do workshops on these. We are constantly having conversations with children about the use of social media. I think as the principal of a school, but also as a parent, I do think that at home it is I think that it is up to the parents to talk to their children and decide how they want to use social media at home and have those constant conversations with their children about healthy uses of social media. At the school site, we do use them here only at the discretion of the teachers for educational purposes. We do try to limit and mitigate the use of social media while on campus so that we can create their focus in the classroom, interacting, the old-fashioned way by talking with each other rather than texting each other. That doesn't always work. And when these things come up, we do address them in other ways. We've had our safety resource officer hold group sessions with our students who have abused social media. We've had other educational opportunities to talk with our students in groups to talk about these pieces. We talk about them within our behavior intervention assemblies. We talk about them within our classrooms. We talk about it within our advisement SSR period. But the question is a very challenging one, and we're constantly working through these pieces. I think it would be worthwhile for us to have continued support in this for the students as we kind of continue on the year and as we start into the new year. But thank you for that question. I do think that it is a combined effort between the community, the parents, the school, and really helping our 12 and 13-year-olds understand how to use it responsibly and how to use it in a positive way.